It seemed completely incongruous to us, as it has to many people, that most of the rest of the world appears to be embracing face masks. But once again, the UK is following a different path on this and still won't give clear direction about it. Obviously, we know that the science is a little split on the validity of them and the effectiveness. But what is your view about the wearing of face masks? Should we now be all told to do it?
So the first thing to say is that we have to encourage people to use the right kind of face masks. And I can go on and on about what is the right kind of face mask. What it does more than anything else is protect other people from yourself if you're carrying the virus. And what this means is that if I get on a train and I'm not wearing a mask, I'm benefiting from the fact that everybody else is wearing a mask. So I think this is exactly why it should be compulsory. I think that if we don't make it compulsory, in other words, it is the people who don't wear them that are causing the greatest damage. So I'm unambiguous about this. I believe as we come out of lockdown, as we have done, say, in London with people on underground and trains, then people should be wearing face masks. We have to compensate for the fact that as people go back onto the underground, we are going to see more virus spread. We will see another peak in the epidemic, and that is the last thing we want. I'm not sure if it's the last thing the government wants, because I think there's an ambiguity in their strategy. Is their strategy to manage this epidemic, or is it to suppress the epidemic? There's two big differences there. If you just want to manage it, you want to keep it going at a low level so we reach herd immunity.
Yeah. Does it strike you that managing it is actually the policy now?
I'm afraid that if we're looking for a rational explanation of government decisions, that is the only explanation I can come up with. Otherwise, it's pure chaos.
Professor Tricia Greenhalgh, on face masks and face coverings specifically, you don't think that people should be punished for not wearing them, but you think that if they're going to get on a train, there should be a whole separate carriage for people who don't want to wear one.
Let's be clear about what I'm saying. I'm saying that we shouldn't be making them mandatory yet. I think that the reason why people are not wearing them at the moment is because they're getting mixed messages. For weeks, the government said, don't wear them because it's not evidence-based.
Yes.
Now they're saying, consider wearing a mask if you can, but it won't protect you. This is a dreadful message to put across. We need to say very clearly, cover your face in a public place. It's evidence-based. It makes us safe. And this is what Sadiq Khan is saying. He's making masks available, accessible in all parts of London. He's encouraging people to wear cloth face masks, primarily to protect other people, but also there is some protection of the wearer as well. If we get that message across, I believe that most people will understand that message and then they will comply. If they don't, then I think there's a good argument, as Dave King said, for making them mandatory.
Well, Professor Bill Kiva, I'm afraid we're at risk of making people more confused right now because you're not entirely convinced that masks do the good that we're promised.
I think if you look at the science, when we speak, cough or sneeze, we produce a range of particle sizes. So the very smallest, less than 5 microns, that's 5,000ths of a millimetre, they remain suspended in the air as an aerosol. And when we breathe them in, they go deep into the lung. We then also produce a range of larger particles called respiratory droplets. Now, the larger the droplet, the faster it falls to the ground. And that's why we have this 2-metre social distance. So there's a big controversy at the moment. What is more infectious, the aerosol, which remains in the air, or the larger respiratory droplets?
But
and
just
therefore,
to interrupt, sorry, if you're wearing a mask, aren't you stopping any of that?
No, and the reason is that the best masks are the ones worn by frontline healthcare workers. So they're wearing the respirators, which are rated for 95% or 99% filtration efficiency.
And we're just using homemade cloth masks. Do you think they have any effect?
Well, there's been several unpublished studies in America where they've compared different materials. So if you've got a loose weave material, such as a T-shirt, if you hold it up to the light, you see the light streaming through. So that's not filtering very well. The American studies concluded the best materials are close woven cotton, such as denim. So if you want, and actually also coffee filters, ironically. So if you want to wear a homemade device, think of something which is close woven.
OK.
But
Professor
also,
Greenhalgh, what would you suggest people watching doing? You know, we understand that there are certain materials that aren't going to work. In certain circumstances, they may not work, but you still think they're of benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. The modelling shows that if you have a cloth mask that's 70% effective and it's worn by 70% of the population, that will be enough to bring the R0 down below 1. And you can argue whether that's 70% or 80%. We don't have to have a face covering that stops every tiny droplet. I am also aware of this rather rarefied science, but the plain fact is, just like your mum told you to use a hanky when you sneeze, it is screamingly obvious that any cloth covering is going to stop some of the droplets and some of the particles. It's as simple as that.
Just before we let you all go, Sir Dave King, as a former chief scientific advisor, how did you react when President Trump says that he has been taking hydrochloroquine and suggests that frontline workers are taking it and some doctors are taking it? What impact could that have, do you think?
Well, I have to say I respond to that as I respond to almost every pronouncement that President Trump...
Hydroxychloroquine, excuse me.
Sorry?
Hydroxychloroquine.
I think he speaks from the top of his head, and every word he says should be ignored in terms of advice. I'm sorry, but this is not the pronouncements of a person who is listening to the scientists. He is making it up as he goes along. Can I just say one more thing? And I think this is an important part of the debate about face masks, which is we can look at what other countries are doing and what successes or failures they've had. And in Austria, they introduced a compulsory wearing of face masks. And when they did that, the R factor in the country fell over the next 2 weeks, and they are attributing it to the fact that everybody's wearing face masks. If we look at the behavior of people in Southeast Asia and South Korea, etc., face masks always used. People are often wearing them without any compulsory requirement. Look at Greece. In Greece, as they come out of lockdown, they are behaving absolutely perfectly, requiring everyone to wear face masks. So I think if we look at other countries, we can see where the behavior is reflected in a better control.
The problem is, Professor, is that we've actually looked at other countries throughout this crisis and then done the complete opposite in almost every regard.